Hi guys! So I'm back with another reading wrap-up. I was going to film a different video, but then I realized that my read list has been getting a bit long and I probably should do a wrap-up before I have like a million books to put on it. I finally finished all my books for school because I'm right in the middle of exam season. No more books to read for school. I'm free for like 4 months to read whatever I want to read, and it's so nice. Anyway, I have quite a few things here, so I'm just going to get right into it and like stop rambling. So the first thing on the list is, again, in my giant Shakespeare anthology. You're going to see this a little bit more. And the play that we read was Antony and Cleopatra. Interestingly, I'm taking a Shakespeare course and I'm also taking a course exclusively on Cleopatra, and reading Antony and Cleopatra lined up with us talking about Antony and Cleopatra's real relationship in my Cleopatra class. Antony and Cleopatra is really good. I liked it as a play. It's very beautiful language. Cleopatra has a lot of like very dramatic and beautiful speeches. That's kind of just her character. And I like that in the play she's not totally characterized as like this seductress she-wolf kind of character like she is in a lot of media now. She is shown as very strong and like smart and everything. There's a little bit of that seduction element there, but not really. It's mostly just her being like, you know, strong, smart with her words. I'm not very smart with my words, obviously. But yeah, it's a really good play. I would recommend it if you're into Shakespeare. I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads. I might up that to like a 3.5 or 4 now that I'm thinking about it more, but it was good. The next book that I read was for my children's literature class, which you've heard me talk about before, and that is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. I posted a picture of this on Instagram while I was reading it, which by the way you should follow my Instagram. And I had people saying to me that like it was like one of their favorite books when they were younger, and it just like reminded them of like crying over it when they were younger. Like, this is like in the 9 to 12 middle grade age group, and that was like my prime of reading. Like I read so much. I basically read the entire library. But I'd never read this book before. I'd never even heard of it. I feel like I missed out because it seems like the exact kind of thing I would have loved when I was younger, and I loved it now. This is basically about a black family in the 30s in Mississippi. So there's a lot of racial tensions because there's a lot of black people in the community, but also a lot of really racist white people. For a kids book, there's a lot of like serious topics, obviously, and the kind of very serious, kind of scary moments. But I think that's a good thing. I don't think we should be censoring that stuff from children's literature. I think that's the best place to put it, is to talk about really serious topics in books like this while kids are young so they can kind of get introduced to these ideas. And I think it's important to teach kids about that and not just like block them off from the world. Anyways, I loved this book and I think you should read it if you haven't. There's a whole series about this family that this book revolves around. And maybe I'll read more books by this author and in that series because I really did connect with the characters. And I rated it 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I read was actually a graphic novel, and that is Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson. So yeah, this book is basically a graphic novel about this girl who kind of starts getting into roller derby and like her whole journey with that. And there's also a plot line about her and her friendship. So it's about friendship and roller derby and like kind of growing apart from friends and growing up. The art style is amazing. There's one character in here who's super into musicals, and like Hugh Jackman is just like her inspiration. And I relate. I think we need more content in books about people who love musicals like me. I don't know anything about roller derby. I don't know how to roller skate. I can't even ice skate. I don't think I'd be good at roller skating. But this book made me very interested in roller derby and made me want to like watch it and like be involved in it. This book is just super cute. The art style is beautiful, you really connect with the characters, and it's just like a really well written story. And I definitely want to read more of Victoria Jameson's books now because she's got a couple more graphic novels out and I am very interested in them. The rating I gave this book was 4.5 stars. I loved it. The next book that I read was for my Conflict in Canadian Literature course, and I actually ended up having to do a little presentation and a part of my essay on this book. That is Brother by David Cherry-Andy. This is a fairly new book. I think it came out like last year, and it's a really, really beautiful book. This book is basically about 2 boys. Their names are Michael and Francis. They're sons of Trinidadian immigrants, and they live in Scarborough, which is part of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And they grow up in a not so nice neighborhood. And then it kind of just goes through how their, growing up affected them. The main character is Michael, and it flashes back between him in the past and him in the present, and how his present is affected by that past, especially because there was a police shooting in the past, and that has affected him to the present, and also the people around him. So yeah, this book talks about, again, racial tensions and specifically about police violence. It was interesting because a lot of times when there's conversations about police violence, we talk about America, we think about America and all the bad stuff that happens down there, and then us Canadians like to think, oh, we're fine up here, nothing bad ever happens, we're perfect. People outside of Canada also like to see us that way, that we don't have that much violence. But there is a lot of police violence, especially in places like Toronto. So it's really shedding light on the fact that we as Canadians are not perfect, and there is still a lot of systemic racism around here. And obviously those kind of stories are very important, and the writing style is also just so gorgeous in this book. This is one of the books I'm really glad I got to read for school. Like, see, it wasn't even a book that I had to read for school and like, oh, it was boring. It was a book that I got to read and I probably wouldn't have read without school, and I'm really glad that I did. So I would absolutely recommend this. It's so good. I rated it 4 stars. I feel like I didn't give a lot of 4-star ratings, but I mean, I'm very stingy with my 5 stars. I give 5 stars out to very few books, and only then like my favorite books. But I think I should start being less stingy with them and just give them out to books that I really like. The next book that I read was Wayfarer by Alexander Bracken. I finally got to this book after like having it for like 3 or 4 years and just not reading it. However long this book's been out for, I've had it and I haven't read it. Actually, let's check. When was the publishing date? Oh, it was only 2017? This book came out in 2017? Okay, so maybe I've only had this book for a year. It feels like I've had this book for multiple years and have not read it, but apparently it's not that old. Don't listen to anything I say ever. Anyways, this is a sequel to Passenger. It's the only other book in the series. It's a duology. I thought it was a pretty good conclusion to the series. It was like a satisfying ending, and you kind of got conclusion for all of the characters, which was good. I don't know if I liked it more or less than Passenger. I think I liked the writing in this book more. It was like she kind of stepped up her game a bit for this book. And there was a lot of like actually really nice passages to read. And what I liked about it was that there was like actual very big stakes in this book. You know, if the bad people win or if the bad thing happens, time could be changed forever, which could affect everything, right? I really liked that about the book, that it did feel like they were actually fighting for something. There was kind of an ambiguity, like you didn't really know who was right and who was wrong and whose plan was actually better than the other. I did feel that one of the romantic plot lines in here was a bit rushed and kind of just felt a bit insta-lovey, and I didn't like that. Anyways, I did really enjoy this book. I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I read is one that I could go on about for ages, but I don't need to because you all know about it, and that's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I had to read this one for my children's literature class, which was awesome, and after reading this book I was inspired to just read the rest of the series because I've only ever read the Harry Potter series once in my life, that was a couple years ago. And I love this series a lot, and now I want to go back and reread it knowing all the things I know, because the first time I read it through I was just trying to get the plot and everything, right? But now that I've been like so invested in like the fandom of it for a couple years, I want to like go back and read it now with this set of eyes where I'm like more obsessed with the characters. I picked up on a lot of details that I didn't get the first time around. The foreshadowing is kind of funny. Like, she mentions once in this book, and I think again in Chamber of Secrets, that Harry is talking to Snape about something, and he's like, it was like Harry got the feeling that Snape could read minds. One thing I don't understand is I cannot fathom how anyone cannot like Harry Potter as a character. He is the nicest kid. He went through a lot in his life, okay? And like people will kind of get on his case for being like a bit thick or like, you know, oblivious and not like realizing stuff throughout the series. But like, at least in the first couple books that I'm reading it, he's like the sweetest kid ever. He's so nice. He just cares about other people. And like, the kid's not dumb. So I don't know why people keep saying that. People also get on his case for being angsty later on in the series, but I think he's allowed to be angsty. He's watched people die. He's basically got the entire like fate of the world on his shoulders. There was like that Tumblr post that went around a while ago that people were like, you know, no one ever says that their favorite Harry Potter character is Harry Potter, which is true. But he's one of my favorite characters in the series. He's just so good. I love Harry so much. Oh, my camera's dying. This is not good. I rated this 5 stars to no one's surprise. Let's move on. I've only got 2 more books left and hopefully I can get through them. The next thing I read was also for my Shakespeare course. It was the play The Winter's Tale. I didn't love this play that much. I would try and explain the plot, but it's kind of like confusing and goes all over the place, and like, and even I'm still a bit confused as to what happened. It's not a super interesting play to me. I didn't really connect with many of the characters. Some of the characters were cool. The Winter's Tale is the play that has the famous stage direction, "Exit pursued by a bear," so that was fun. The bear scene was weird because it literally just came out of nowhere and killed this guy. Like, it's such an absurd scene. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about The Winter's Tale. It wasn't bad. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like love it. And I ended up just rating it 3 stars. And the last book that I had to read for school was a poetry book. It's a little bit strange, it's a little bit uncomfortable to read, and even to say the title of this book. That is Injun by Jordan Abel. This is a book of poetry. It's by an Indigenous author, a Canadian Indigenous author. I basically went into this database of old Western novels and just searched the word Injun in those Western novels, and he came up with a bunch of results from like different pages and sentences that included that word. It's what Westerns are built around, apparently, and they mention that word a lot. So he put it into sentences and cut those sentences up and pages up, and he just kind of like started making poetry out of other people's work and out of those books that included the word Injun and just kind of like incorporating it into poetry. It's a really cool idea. It's experimental poetry if that's a thing you're into. I am not. I don't like normal poetry. Not that I don't like it, but it doesn't click with my brain. Like, I can't read poetry very well. So with weird conceptual experimental poetry, I have an even harder time because a lot of the times there's just a bunch of letters on a page. Like, there's not even words here. And it's all stylistically important, like he does it all for a reason, but I just didn't connect with me that much. I totally got what he was trying to do, and it's a very, very cool idea, but I just didn't enjoy my time reading it. If you're into poetry, this is probably something you'd like, though. And I really appreciate what he's trying to do, and I get the whole artistic element of it, but poetry is just not my thing. Because of that, I rated it 2 stars, not for quality, just for my own personal enjoyment, and I was also just confused while reading it most of the time. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite thing that I've read, but an interesting concept nonetheless. That is my wrap-up. Those are the books that I've been reading recently. Like I said, I'm now kind of on my spring-summer break, so I'm gonna be able to read a lot more books that I want to read, which is very fun and very exciting. Let me know down in the comments what you've been reading, if you've read any of these books, and what you thought of them. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video whenever that is. Bye!